Welcome to Facts TV News, where everything is true. Naranda gets approval to mine near Cockpit Country in St. Ann. The Natural Resource Conservation Authority (NRCA) will allow Naranda bauxite to mine in the vicinity of the Cockpit Country, but says the area approved is much smaller than was applied for by the company. Naranda was seeking to mine 8,335 acres on the Special Mining Lease 173, but in May last year, Mining Minister Robert Montague said the boundaries would be reviewed following objection from stakeholders. Dr. Peter Knight, head of the NRCA, said the authority has now approved only 1,324 hectares for mining in St. Ann. That area excludes the school and the Mandras community, he said, noting that the authority had used science and the epical data to justify the decision. Mr. Knight said the National Environment and Planning Agency (NEPA) will mandate additional studies to inform the renewal of the environmental permit over a 5-year cycle and consideration for future mining outside the approved area. He added that there will be oversight of the mining by multi-agency partners, and the National Heritage Trust will oversee protection of heritage sites in the area. A compensation mechanism is also one of the conditions. According to Dr. Knight, it must be developed and executed to address the loss of livelihoods. In addition, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will be mandated to issue terms of reference for the conduct of a health impact assessment report. The condition is that the MOU be established with the Mining and Geology Division, Forestry Division, NEPA and the Water Resources Authority as it relates to the depth of mining and restoration of mined areas. However, Hugh Dixon, Executive Officer of the South Trulon Environmental Association, said he is disappointed with the NRCA's decision. The sacrificing of 1,324 hectares is unfortunate because we really wanted to recover all of the SML 173 and begin to look at an existing strategy for bauxite from Jamaica and the Cockpit Country as a wider consideration, he insisted. Don't rule out tightening of restrictions as COVID cases spike, says medical doctor. With Jamaica's COVID-19 positivity rate now close to 50% and hospitalizations again increasing, Dr. Donald Gordon, president of the Association of General Practitioners of Jamaica, has said a tightening of restrictions should not be ruled out. The Ministry of Health earlier reported that 769 COVID cases were confirmed from 1,499 samples on Sunday. This resulted in a positivity rate of 48.4%. Hospitalizations for COVID-19 also increased by 14 to 137. Dr. Gordon told reporters on Monday that based on the latest COVID-19 data, the risk of infection has increased. For the man in the street, it means that he has a much greater chance of becoming infected, and the situation in the hospitals, we have to be guided by that because it depends on the level of hospitalization, and it also depends on the age groups that are being hospitalized. You know, if you're having a lot of elderly, sick persons who are being hospitalized, then that will translate to a possibility of higher fatality. But if it's probably very young persons, they might be able to ride it out, he explained. 16 of the COVID-19 patients currently admitted are severely ill, while 4 are in critical condition. At the same time, a 91-year-old man from St. Ann is the latest to die from the virus in Jamaica, pushing the death toll to 2,477. Dr. Gordon warned that the situation will have to be closely monitored in coming days. Redhead charged with young Jezariah Tales murder. A 22-year-old man has been charged with the murder of 10-year-old Jezariah Tyrell. He is Tommy Powell, otherwise called Redhead, a laborer of James Street in Kingston. The police said on Monday that Powell was also slapped with charges of shooting with intent and illegal possession of firearm and ammunition. Reports from the Central Police are that about 2:50 a.m. on Thursday, December 30th, Jezariah and her relatives were asleep at their home on Fleet Street in Kingston when a relative reportedly smelled gasoline and heard strange sounds on the roof. He went to investigate and was pounced upon by an intruder who attempted to gain entry into the house while firing at the occupants. When the gunfire subsided, it was discovered that Jezariah had been shot. She was taken to hospital where she was pronounced dead. Paul was charged on Monday following an interview in the presence of his attorney. His court date is being finalized, the police stated. Fire breaks out on JUTC passenger bus in 3 miles. Officials of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company JUTC have launched an investigation to find out the cause of a fire that destroyed a double-compartment state-owned bus in the vicinity of Portia Simpson Miller Square 3 miles on Monday. Reports are that several passengers narrowly escaped injury after the unit caught fire in the busy area. Information coming from sources is that the bus was transporting passengers when the driver noticed smoke coming from a section of the unit. Passengers managed to evacuate the unit while the driver tried to use an extinguisher to put out the blaze. The fire department was also called and the fire was later extinguished. The extent of the damage has not yet been determined. Education Ministry moves forward with plans to resume face-to-face classes. The Education Ministry is moving ahead with the planned resumption of face-to-face classes for the nation's children. This despite rising COVID-19 numbers and a positivity rate nearing 50%. Yesterday, more than half of the approved schools reopened their doors to students. Still, there are mounting concerns as to whether the government should halt the reopening of schools. Health officials say the country is at the beginning stage of the fourth wave of the coronavirus. But the Education Minister says children cannot afford to be out of school any longer.
It's been nearly 2 years since thousands of Jamaican children faced their teachers and peers in a physical classroom. The country's Education Minister Favour Williams says 60% of the island's schools welcomed their pupils back to face-to-face classes on Monday morning.
What we got at the end of the day here in terms of tally, some 605 schools of roughly 1,000 or so schools were reopened for face-to-face engagement, or about 60% of schools. What we saw with the numbers obviously would be more primary schools that are open in the face-to-face, some 568 primary schools and about 30 secondary schools.
The minister says the majority of high schools remain in the online modality, but she expects that to change as the week progresses. She says by all indications, it was a smooth resumption. As more schools reopen their doors, there are concerns regarding how they will cope with the fast rising COVID infections. Already, President of the Jamaica Association of Principals of Secondary Schools, Linvern Wright, says it may be necessary to close schools again should infections continue unabated. But Minister Williams says that would be a costly decision for many students.
For these past 2 years, we've seen them in the online world. We know the hassle of being in that, using that modality. While there has been learning going on, we know that not every child has a device or not every child has connectivity. And so that has to be frustrating for many of our students.
The minister says her team, along with health officials, will continue to monitor the situation, but there are currently no plans to halt the resumption of classes.
As of today, no, there are no plans. We'll continue to do our monitoring of the schools, and our monitoring really gets down to the school, to the actual school, to say what are you noticing, how are children showing up, how many children are showing up in the physical school, how many teachers, how about the administrative staff, how are they? So we inquire into what is happening on the ground to the particular school.
Minister Williams is assuring parents that all necessary protocols are being put in place to ensure students can be in physical school safely.
Principals expressed mixed reaction about resumption of face-to-face classes. A number of principals across the island have expressed mixed reaction to the resumption of face-to-face classes yesterday amid a growing spike in COVID-19 cases. The Ministry of Education last month affirmed that all schools be open for face-to-face engagement amid a growing learning loss due to remote learning. However, as the country braces for a fourth wave of the virus, some schools have made prior adjustments to reopen yesterday, while others have decided to delay.
After almost 2 years of academic uncertainty for some students due to the onset of COVID-19, the nation's children are finally re-entering classrooms across the island. While there has been some anxiety among some principals, others have welcomed the move as a first step to reaching students who are lost. Principal of Racees High School, Donna Anderson, told our news center today that more than half of their students have returned to school.
Well, basically, we have welcomed our 11th graders, sixth formers, and we have recognized, based on my last check, that we have in excess of 75% of our students. We were online until November. We welcomed our exit students as we would have been mandated.
Anderson explained that teachers from select grades were asked to come in physically, while others were instructed to teach remotely.
We have 1/3 of the staff. We try to be a bit flexible because we recognize we have to have the protocol in place in terms of the distancing and all of that. So we would have asked our 11th grade teachers and sixth form teachers to be here, while the others teach online.
Principal of the St. Elizabeth-based Goshen All-Age School, Natalie Roper-Allen, said her school was never closed.
We were open from November 8th. We were in the phase reopening. We have continued with the similar rotation program where we have grade 6, 3, and 1 slated to be in today. However, my grade 1 teacher is not well, so they are still online. Grade 6 and 3 are here, and we have 87% attendance.
Meanwhile, principal of Manchester-based Mayday High School, Stanford Davis, says he would have preferred if schools reopened in February in light of a looming fourth wave.
I'm in full support of students coming back face-to-face. However, based on the fact that we're coming out of the Christmas holidays and with the opening up and the booming fourth wave, I would have waited for January to see what I would have gone online for January and then see how it's responding and open for February.
Jamaica's COVID-19 positivity rate has now jumped to almost 50%. This is the highest the positivity rate has been since the third wave of the pandemic ended.
Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell for daily updates.